I love books about woodworking. I don't know if anybody likes to read about old furniture as much as I do. And you read these books and the authors are more than happy to tell you about 17th, 18th, 19th century furniture. What pieces did people make? What timbers did they use? What joints? How did they cut them? Everything. And I take all that information and put it into the projects you see right here on this channel. But any good researcher has to put the books down once in a while and do a little field research. So a couple times a year, I like to hit the road and check out real antique furniture. And when you start looking at actual furniture from the last 100 or 200 years, you might get your eyes opened in a hurry. Put a bunch of real pieces together in one place and you'll see things that aren't in any book. You'll see joinery techniques that nobody talks about, colors that aren't in any of the pictures. More than anything, you will just see how the craftsmen of old got it done with whatever was sitting around. They weren't obsessing about the angle of their dovetails or the grain of a tabletop. Working furniture makers were getting pieces delivered and getting paid. And the work they did might sometimes seem inelegant or even crude, but it was also efficient, sturdy, durable, and often strangely beautiful. If you can just open your eyes and free your mind from other people's ideas about what makes something pretty or graceful, there is an entire world of craftsmanship out there waiting to be discovered. And once you've seen it, you might think, maybe it's time to put the books away for a minute, maybe even turn off the YouTube videos. There might be a much better way to learn this craft. A couple of weeks ago, I spent the day at the Burton Antiques Show, close to where I live in northern Ohio. It's an amazing place to see real vintage furniture. There are several hundred vendors, thousands of pieces, and a huge array of work on display. Now, this is more of a flea market, not some showroom full of French antiques. It's more, country furniture. But to me, that actually makes it more interesting. At a show like this, you'll see pieces and styles that aren't mentioned in any book or magazine. For instance, check out this handsome old dresser in highly figured oak. I mean, really figured. Like actually a little too figured. Because it's not even oak. It's pine. That grain pattern has been painted on. This was once a common technique to make inexpensive woods like pine and poplar look like fancier woods, like oak or mahogany. It's one of the ways that working class people got their furniture to look a little more like upper class furniture. But as time went on, the technique got more artistic and even stopped trying to imitate actual wood grain. It was just another style of decoration and wasn't intended to fool anybody. Some artists even had a sense of humor about the whole thing. Let's go back to that dresser. From a few feet away, it really does look like figured oak. But get a little closer and the illusion breaks down. Get really close, and the owner's name and date are right there in the grain painting. No one is trying to fool anybody here. It was just the style of the day, and the maker and owner decided to have a little fun. Grain painting was such a widespread technique, but these days you almost never hear about it. It kind of seems like something that somebody should bring back. I mean, if you could take pine or poplar and paint them to look like oak or mahogany, well, that seems like a very useful skill, especially with everybody complaining about the high cost of wood right now. Either way, grain painting is just a finishing detail. When I go to these shows, the thing I really like to see are whole pieces of furniture that used to be common, but have pretty much vanished from our homes. This is a Doe Trough, which used to be a very common kitchen appliance. You've got a slope-sided box on an elevated stand, and you actually kneaded your bread dough right in the box, and then covered it while the dough was rising. And the cover would protect your dough from lice and other vermin that I guess were constantly falling off your body in the days before modern hygiene. So I guess it's kind of good that we don't need Doe Troughs anymore. But also, in the past, houses were smaller, with smaller rooms that were more efficient to heat. And since space was at a premium, there was a whole style of furniture that was multi-function, single pieces that did a bunch of different things to save space. Here's a nice little table. Good size, well built. Now, you might be thinking that the undercarriage looks a little bit odd, but that's because you can lift the tabletop, and the whole thing becomes a bench. So, in a cramped kitchen, this piece could be up against the wall, serving as seating throughout the day. And then in the evening, you just fold it down and move it to the center of the room, and everyone can gather around for dinner. This was a very common piece of furniture, especially in Ireland, and it's fun to imagine the immigrant craftsmen who might have recreated this piece in the New World. But whoever did make it added an extra twist, right here in the seat. The craftsman saw some unused space down there and made it into a chest that would be accessible anytime the table was folded up. So it's a table, a bench, and a chest. A triple function piece of furniture. That's amazing. And when I go to these shows, I see lots of other styles of furniture that no one really talks about in modern woodworking. Here's a good example. This chair might look weird, but this is a pretty common style of rustic furniture called bent willow construction. In this style, the maker takes advantage of the flexibility of narrow willow branches and just works them into all kinds of big, crazy loops and circles. And then the whole thing is just nailed together. I admit, I don't really understand how you can nail together branches of green wood and end up with a functional piece of furniture. I don't think I ever saw one of these until I moved to Ohio, but this is a common regional style where I live. You see them on people's front porches all the time, and they're still being made. So why don't you read about these in the books and magazines? I think it's because they're just so weird. I mean, there aren't even any boards here. It's just green branches nailed together. I don't think this even fits our modern definition of woodworking. But it obviously is woodworking. Chairs like this, well, we should probably think about making them. And speaking of chairs, these antique shows are a great place to find post and rung chairs with woven bark seats. This is real deal American furniture made by rural craftsmen using local woods and simple techniques. The seats really are made from tree bark, usually hickory. The rest of the chair is made from split pieces of green wood, usually turned on a simple foot-operated pole lathe. If you've ever read or heard about Make a Chair from a Tree, well, this is the style covered in that book. It's an especially American form of chair making. You find these as rocking chairs or sitting chairs. They have great details cut in with a draw knife and backs made from thin slats of wood, steam bent, and then mortised and pinned into the back posts. These chairs only weigh a couple of pounds, but they'll support a full-grown adult. The whole thing is kind of a marvel of engineering. This all might sound a little weird, but these chairs are made completely from green, unseasoned wood, and the parts aren't sawn, they're split directly from the log, and they're shaped while the wood is still wet. And you can see evidence of this construction right in the chairs. If we go around behind one of these chairs and look at the back slats, we find this. This is called a riving mark. It's a place where the grain tore out a little bit while the piece was being split from the log. And that split construction is what allows these chairs to be light and incredibly strong. Because the splits follow the grain, the wood fibers run the whole length of each piece. Wood like that is much stronger than sawn wood, and it can be very thin and still support a lot of weight. I know, you're thinking, this is all very, very interesting, but could we please get back to some more normal woodworking techniques? I mean, how, for instance, could looking at these old pieces of furniture make us better at cutting dovetails? Well, you can learn a lot about dovetails from looking at old furniture, but it might not be what you expect. Modern books and videos stress dovetails like these: neatly cut, precisely fitted, and relatively evenly spaced. Even this one might be a little sloppy by modern standards. But when you really look at old furniture, you just see an enormous variation in these joints. For every one that's neat and precise, you'll find another that's quick and dirty. Some of them are just proportioned weirdly, and they have huge tails and tiny pins or unexpected angles. Even neatly fitted examples often have saw marks past the baseline and visible layout lines under the finish. These craftsmen were working to a very different standard than the fussy perfection we're told to expect today. We even see unexpected joints used in place of the dovetail. Check out this drawer. Instead of the half-blind dovetail we expect, there's just a rabbet, reinforced with nails. You would expect that this joint wouldn't be durable over the long term, but this piece has to be 100 years old or more, and the joint is perfectly tight. If you go to a show like this expecting to find rules for your joinery, you're going to be disappointed. Old school craftsmen they did what worked. Some of the things they used, they learned from other craftspeople. Some of the things they just tried, and if it held together, they kept doing it. Now, I don't want you to think that I spent this entire show just looking at drawers and chairs. I also looked at workbenches. I'm a big advocate of these low, sit-down benches. Here, I'm working at my lightweight traveler bench. You can build it for around $30, and it's a real woodworking bench that's also portable. I'm the low bench guy, but even I was surprised by the number of low workbenches I saw at this show. I'm sure most of these weren't even woodworking benches. They're more likely just general farm benches. But you can't deny the usefulness of a bench that keeps popping up over and over. Some of them were made from a slab of sawn timber, while others were made from a section of a split log. But they all had the same construction, where the legs are staked right through the top and then wedged in place. I even found this coffee table, I guess? I'm not really sure what it is, but it's still got that dependable round wedge tenon. If that's not your thing, I found this massive old cabinet maker's bench, complete with the classic dovetailed tail vise and a very rare and valuable pattern maker's vise on the front. Now, this bench was probably commercially made, and I'm more of a DIY person, so I really get a kick out of benches like this one. This bench has the classic Scandinavian frame, with slave feet and through tenons. But instead of the whole bench being in that style, the top is much more English, with a heavy plank in front of the user, a shallow tool well further back, no dog holes, and a single face vise to the left. This bench is an amazing hybrid of a couple of different styles. The maker either combined benches he'd seen or just made do with available materials, and this is what he came up with. What's really fascinating is that this is a knockdown design, with those same tusk tenons I made a few weeks ago. Just like a lot of modern craftspeople, the builder needed a portable bench that could be broken down and put together quickly. Maybe it was an on-site bench for house carpentry, or it was owned by a part-time furniture maker. Either way, it obviously worked. I also found this great little English joiner's bench, which is an awful lot like the bench I work on every day. It's even got basic half-lap construction, just nailed together, and the top is made from surprisingly thin material. I'm kind of shocked at how lightweight the whole thing is. The most interesting feature is this leg vise. You might notice this triangular framing behind the vise. That's a pretty sophisticated construction that keeps the vise jaw parallel, without the need for a pegboard or a wedge or any of the other adjustments that people usually use. I've seen pictures of these in books before, but I didn't know if people actually used them. In case you're wondering, I obviously fiddled around with the vise a little bit, and it totally works. This is probably a modification that more people should try. And the bench overall? Is this lightweight nailed construction some sort of secret to economical bench building? No, it was actually sort of rickety and wobbly and kind of awful, honestly. Whoever made this bench, they either didn't do heavy work on it or they didn't use it for very long, because it is a terrible workbench. Anyway, I could go on talking about these pictures of old furniture and old workbenches all day long, but the point of this video is that you can do research forever, looking at pictures and books and watching videos, and eventually you need to put that stuff away. You've got to get out in the world and look at real furniture pieces. When I first moved to Northern Ohio, I had no idea that so much furniture was built here. I had no idea there were regional styles here that you don't see in the rest of the country. I only found out because I went and looked at what was around. You should try doing that where you live. Maybe there are amazing regional styles and techniques that other people don't know about. Maybe you can tell other people about them. Anyway, if you're getting into woodworking, you probably need some sort of workbench, and I've got a couple designs that you might want to look at. I've got my low, lightweight traveler bench, which is portable and great for getting started, and I also have my English joiner's bench, which is a much heavier, more serious bench that's still very easy to build. I've got videos on both of these benches and plans that will get you started building really fast. And you can find links to all that stuff in the description or go to rexkrueger.com/store. And of course, this video would never be possible without my patrons on Patreon. I've been gone from YouTube for a couple of weeks because I got a little sick, but my patrons still knew what was going on. I still made them little vlog videos, I did behind the scenes stuff, I kept them up to date. If you'd like to get that extra content, go on over to patreon.com/rexkrueger and check out all the rewards I have for the people who make this content possible. I'll see you next week with another woodworking video. Thanks so much for watching.